After learning the REST API standards and different various Node.js concepts and understanding what is HTTP and what are REST, now we are in a position to apply our Node.js knowledge and the REST API standards to expose a HTTP server. So a HTTP server is a server where the data is exchanged, where client asks for some APIs. I mean, we write APIs in the server, and the protocol for data transfer is HTTP, right? So in this video, we'll look at how to create a HTTP server with core Node.js module and how you can make GET request, POST request, PUT request, delete request, and also how you can set the request header, set the request status, response status, and how do they modify, or how do they change on the response behavior of the client, right? So let's look into that. So let me create a new file, right? So I'm creating a new file, rest server.js, right? So I'll be creating a new HTTP server over here, which will accept request and also process the request, and maybe we'll try to look at the request headers and add some validations. So you'll have a good understanding of how the HTTP server is created and managed on or with the core Node.js module, right? So first, let's import the module. So there is an inbuilt module HTTP inside the request, inside the Node.js itself. So if you see here, this module is the inbuilt module inside the Node.js itself. So it has many features, server, net server, it extends, and it does a lot of stuff actually. So server response. So it's a big file actually, right? So using this module, using this npm module, what we'll do is we'll create a new server which will accept some request from us, and it process the data. Or right now we can simply create a server at least in the first go, right? So I would need a port. So basically any server, so any server runs on a URL, right? Runs on a URL. It means a URL will contain, URL is equal to protocol, what do I say, the appearance of the URL, or how does it looks like, right? URL, or we can simply copy one URL, right? We'll copy one URL from the browser and we'll debug it. I simply copied one URL from the browser. I copied the amazon.com or amazon.in URL. So if we look at this part of URL, right, it is like this: protocol colon / domain name .com or .in or .co .edu .org. It can be anything, right? So this is a typical URL. So any server, and basically when there is no port mentioned here, right? So whenever there is no port mentioned here, it means that by default HTTP runs on the port 80. HTTP servers run on the port 80 in our system. So port is nothing but it's like a small place or a small location inside your server on which it is running, right? So the address of any application or any server would contain something like this: protocol, domain name, and the port number, right? So by default, all HTTP servers run on port 80, and all HTTPS servers run on port 443, and DB servers like Postgres run on 5432, and Redis servers run on 6792, right? 6392. All like different servers have chosen their different ports and etc. So right, when you are creating your server in local, you can choose whatever port you want, which is available to you, right? So I'll choose a port number. Constant port is equal to, right? Constant port is equal to 3000, but I want to read it from env, because in different files in different environments. And there might be we need to run it on a different port, right? Because maybe that port is not available in that server. So I'll try to parse the request, or I would say the env config file, right? .env .config, right? So I'll update my port over here. I'll remove this. Port is equal to 3000. So I'm running my server on the port 3000. So process.env.port, right? But if the port is available, this is the one. Otherwise, I'll assign the 3000. So if by mistake the env value is not updated or anything, so if this value becomes null, then the default value goes to be 3000, right? So just safe parsing. Now, how do you create a server? So you just do it like this: HTTP dot. So we are using this variable, and on this variable you have many methods. See, create server, request, get, server, agent, and all of these, port, config, all of this, right? So similarly, we have to use create server. So if you now go into the implementation of this create server, right? Create server has two overrides. One is the one which is directly taking a request listener. So when a request comes to it, it's a callback function basically. See, request listener is another callback function, right? So you can give request server, create server a callback function which will be executed whenever a request comes to us, right? And it also has another override, that is it takes server options. So these server options are other advanced options which contain incoming message, server response, max header size, and stuff like that. But one thing to notice here is that in both of these cases, it returns a server to us, right? The request listener is a function which is automatically added to the request event, right? So when you call the create server, you are getting a server to your access, and I have to take a request listener which is going to listen to my requests which are coming to this particular function. So I'm attaching a callback function, and the callback function, if you see, the callback function is going to get two variables or two parameters: request and the response. Request is what the client wants to send to us, response and what we want to send back to the client. So incoming message has lot of features, complete, many. It's a big object. Headers, and what are headers we'll also see, and what is the status code and stuff like that. But yeah, so to create a server, you all have to do is this. And now let me just do console.log request received. So I'm just logging for all the requests right now. Let's add more logic into it and understand what we can do with it. But not here, we just created the server, right? We are not running it. So we created it, we bought something, and now you have to start it. So for starting it, you have to say on which port you have to start it. So server.listen. So server.listen on this port or this address, you have to listen or start listening to your events, right? So that's what server.listen does. So here server.listen takes port name, right? So port name, everything is optional basically. So port name is port, and it takes a callback. And this callback is executed whenever the server is started. On the port number, server started on the port. So whatever port you give, it will be started on that particular port, right? So this is our basic HTML server or HTTP server, right? Which is ready to accept requests. So first, let me start this server and see what will happen, right? So, okay. Yeah. So npm or node index rest server.js. So see, server started on the port 3000. So now how do I send request to this particular server? I have to open my browser. So let me open my browser, right? And just a minute. Yeah. So now if you see here, localhost 3000. So localhost is my system. So my domain name would be localhost in my system because my server and my client both are running in the same computer, right? So localhost 3000 is nothing but, so when I'm doing this, it is nothing but HTTPS. Oh no, when I'm trying to copy this and then I do this localhost 3000, right? So it is nothing but HTTP colon localhost 3000, and when I run this, see, request is received. We are not sending any response, so this will be rotating like this. So you might be observed, or you might have observed a lot, that some servers, when you open a website, those servers keep on rotating it because the server has not responded with what to do, right? Now let me check what has happened, right? So if request dot or let me console.log request, and let's examine what is there in the request, right? And let me send some response, right? Res.end data. So I'm just sending some response. We'll talk about it. Node.js res.server. Let me open a terminal for you so that it is a lot clear, right? So all right. I'm pulling up my terminal. Yes. So here, let me increase the font size and let me cd into the path over here. So pwd gives me the path, and I'm copy pasting it. Node.js, right? cd path. Now I am here in my application, right? So if I do ls, all my files are there. Now node rest server.js, it has started, right? Now when I execute or when I run a command localhost, so I got res.data because I was sending res.data, res.end, we'll talk about it, right? But if you see, this is the request object. This is the request object this big. It is very, 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 very huge request object. Let me scroll down. So it's very, very big. Yeah, when I was unable to scroll as well. But if you see few of the methods or values over here, request.method. So whenever I make any request from the browser, the request.method is get. So all the requests from the browsers are get request, right? And the status code is null, status message is null. And also, if you observe localhost, see, the port or the server is running on the port localhost, and then host is localhost. So here host is localhost, and if I see console.log, so now let me console.log request.method comma request dot headers comma request dot raw headers, right? Now let me run this code again, or I can use nodeman, right? Nodeman, it will automatically detect changes. Rest server.js. Now it is running on port 3000. Let me rerun this code, right? So I removed the res.end data, right? So let me hit it again. Yes. So see, these are the headers, and this is the request.method, and this is the header. So this is raw headers. Okay. So when you see or when you examine the headers, you have host, connection DNT accept says some image WebP, WebAPNG, and set fetch site, fetch mode, referrer, cookie, and something of this sort, right? So every request has its own headers, and every response has its own headers. Now, what are headers? Headers are ways or some metadata which tells your server or clients how to parse the data, right? So how to parse the data, that's what are called as headers. So when you send a header value, you can send as a token. So when you send something in the request headers, that request headers will be completely masked out. So completely if you see the network tab in the browser, right? If you see the network tab, and if I refresh, right, all right, so I was unable to see, it's fine, yeah. So I don't see any request over here. Cool. Yeah, so when you send some request to the browser, to the server, these headers actually give a lot of information, and we can rely on that headers, because they are totally masked. I mean, it is not visible to the user, whoever is performing the user, but whoever writes the front end code, they are responsible for that. So if you see, we are also getting what browser are we using, and what system I'm on, and what it is exactly, right? So now let me explain you this request. So if request.method is equal to get, then you send some response. So both request and response are like a streams as in, so these are objects, or these are methods, or these are functions which accept data. So request is a readable stream, request object is a readable stream, and response is a writable stream. It means request is what you read or client is sending you, and response is what we send to them. So request contains different methods. You can make get request or post request or port request, right? So right now I'll do this. If request.method is this, then request.method is equal to post. I'll show you how we can change the request methods. We can use postman for that. If request.method is equal to put, right, and if request.method is equal to delete, and if request.method is equal to patch, right? So now my server is ready to accept any type of request, right? Now let me send the response. So what is response? Response is a writable stream. It means you can send response to the user continuously by using two methods. So how do you send response to the user? res.write. So here I can send hello res.write. So you can continuously keep on writing data to the user, hello world, and then res.end. So now when you make a request to this server, right? When you make a request to this server, user will be able to see hello world end. So let me do that, right? So let me add each of this in all the methods, and also what I'll do is I'll also send the method to identify request.method comma request.url. So what is URL? Request.method.request.url. Let's see that one as well. So instead of request.write, I'll do hello world just in one place, and hello world, and then this is removed. So now you will identify, right? Correct. So these are the request methods which we are currently supported, right? So now let me run my code, and to make different types of request to your server, you need Postman. So Postman is a client wherein you can send different types of HTTP request, right? Yeah. So let me open my Postman. Yeah. So here, let me close. So Postman contains all types of request methods, right? Yeah. So please download the latest version of Postman for any of the backend development, because this is one-stop solution for all your things, right? So here you can create environments, here you can create APIs, you can monitor, you can create a flows and everything, right? So let me zoom in. Zoom in. Yeah. So yes, now I'll make a new request. So I can make a new request from here as well. Localhost 3000. So I'm making a request to localhost 3000. Now I'll send the request. Okay, localhost 3000. What happened? We got an error. So it's okay, fine. We got an error. We will see what is that error. Internal streams writable. It says internal streams writable error. And where is it? App crashed, waiting for file changes. So I think the problem is with this. You have to send a string is what I guess. And yeah, now let me run my code. Again, it is crashing. Internal streams writable to 93. Don't worry, we'll read the errors and we'll understand what's going wrong, and then we can fix it, because errors are most common things which we get to see. Rest.write request.method. So when you're facing such errors, always do console.log request.method, right? Request.method. Now my server is started. If I send the request, I got the get request. So whatever request I am trying to send, I got the request, right? It is saying error unknown encoding. It is saying error unknown encoding, right? Headers. Let's see what is this unknown encoding. I think we have to UTF-8. So the problem is, okay, I think we did change in put request. Oh, for put it is working, and for get it is not. I understood, right? This is because again request rest.write takes only one parameter. So see here, request.write takes only one parameter, and second parameter is a callback function, but instead we have given some other string. So just what I'll do is I'll try to replace. So this is a wrong syntax. So whenever you get wrong syntax, you get very weird errors, but again you just have to come back and check if everything is going to be right. So chunk is the data which you want to send, right? So I'll replace this rest dot with the method. Perfect. Now everything should work fine. Let me hit the API. Perfect. So we got the response. Hello world, get and end. So if you see here, hello world request.method is a get method and request.end. everything is appended, but they are appended without any text or spaces or anything, right? So let me add spaces. Let me add spaces plus T, and yeah, so let me capitalize this. It looks a bit clean. Perfect. So now when I send my request, oh, it is again not accepting. Plus, let me do and add a new line, right? So yeah, so I can use template strings as well to avoid all of this confusion. Template strings this is how we use, right? And then /n. Now when I send the request, again I'm not getting error. I'm getting an error. It's saying res.end is not a function. Oh god, this got changed. Shit. And I have to change. So when we replaced end with capital N, this got replaced. So let me do it back. Yeah. Now everything is fine. We send the request. We got hello world get end. So similarly, when you make a post request, you are getting post end because they haven't changed this. So see, post method is going this, and request.method is going to get the method. And yeah, so let me add another parameter over here for the put request. If you see for the put request, right? If you see for the put request, you got slash as the request, right? Slash as the URL. So let me add n, and let me do plus \n. I want to show one thing over here, plus \n, right? Now when I run this code for the put method mainly, so see, the URL is slash, I mean base URL. Now if I say here some URL, new person, right? New person or anything. So see, the URL has become new. Now if I want to, so whenever you see some pages on the website, so each URL has different meaning, right? So now you can modify your code over here itself to only execute some piece of code. So now I can say and request.url is equal to new. So only when, or update, right? Only when request.url is update, then only this method will be executed. So see, if I send this, now it is not matching with any of the if else condition. So hence it is not giving us any response. So see, sending request but no response. So to handle this case as well, we can say if or what I would say is, if any of these cases don't match, request dot or response dot set status code. Response dot status code as 404, it means no URL is present, and res dot write head. So here on the res dot write head, you can set the status code over here. So it returns a header value to the response. So you can set a response code over here, or res.status code. Any method can be used, and you can set the content type. So content type is a header which says what type of content are you sending from your backend. Is it a plain HTML? So is it a text HTML? Is it a JSON? Is it a PDF? Is it an image? So if you see in the Postman, right, if you see content type, here we have, see, this many number of content types: application, PostScript, RSS, XML, PDF, JavaScript, JSON, or anything. So whatever content type you are sending from the backend, that will be understood by the front-end server, and it renders that. Now see, if I send res.write and I'm sending a HTML because I'm setting the content type header to text/HTML. Then it says it will be rendered or it will be understood by the postman or the browser, whoever is there. It says that, hey, this particular URL is not available, so not found. URL not found. So this is a HTML I'm sending from my front end, and what I would do is I will apply a method over here also. I'll apply a condition over here also, and request dot URL is equal to only on the base URL this should be executed. Now when I go to my postman and get the request and I'm trying to hit some random URL, so it should give me some message. So it gave me 404, which is expected, and if I go to the HTML, I didn't end the response. So see, when I don't end the response, I have just written it, so it is again in the waiting condition. So what I have to do, it's not just writing to the response but also end the response. So now when I hit the URL again, so see, URL not found. URL not found is what we got, and see, when you look at the preview, it is pretty raw preview. So whatever mode of thing you try to do, that will be present. So now when I hit the same thing in the browser as well, right? When I hit the same thing in the browser as well, I get URL not found, which is a HTML content, not the base static or text, plain text. So you can set the header types to anything basically. So I can set it to application JSON, right? I can set it to application JSON, and I can say message URL not found, right? Now when I hit it from my browser, so see, oh god, it's not yet started, I guess. Message, I have to send it in the form of string only, so I have to JSON dot string if I this particular object. So now when I restart it, so see, message URL not found. This is what I am seeing in my browser. Now it is not a HTML content, and when I hit it the same URL from the postman, you see that raw, it is a JSON format. So if you look at the headers, whatever headers I am setting there, application JSON, it is parsed and the response is rendered based on this. So when a HTML page is viewing, the backend server sets the HTML content type as text HTML. In the same way, if you want to download a PDF, if you want to open a PDF, in all such cases, you would set the content type HTML, you will set the content type header to whatsoever it is. In the same way, if I want to send a custom header from my side like this, so authorization, here I am sending some random value, right? A very protected secret key, a very protected secret key, right? Now how to, so it's like you are giving your APIs, your server access to somebody else, and they have to send this secret key so that you are identifying them. So you can apply that logic as well over here like this. So if request dot get header, headers of authorization, so we are sending as authorization, right? If this is not equal to this value, whatever we ask them to send, right, then we can send them a different status code based on the request HTTP or REST API standards. If this is not equal to the very protected secret code, then we can say rest dot write head, or we can simply use rest dot status code equal to 401 unauthenticated and rest dot end. So when you hit now, if you hit any of these API methods without this authorization code, then they are going to be failed. So see, I'll not send this header and I'm hitting it. So here, okay, there is some problem. This dot status code is not a function. What the heck? is this deprecated? Res dot, oh, it's a property basically, right? So res dot write head. So here I'll set the status code as 401 and I'll give the message as invalid authorization token provided, and then I'll say res dot end, right? So now when I start my server and hit it without authorization token, then I get to see invalid authorization token provided and with the 401 status code. And when I send it with this, I get to see the correct value, but again there is some error stream right after end. Error stream right after end. Yeah, it is because I'll do this. Else if. So you cannot, after res dot end, you cannot do again res dot write, right? So this block of code is going to be executed after all of these conditions, right? So let me put it in else condition. So what is happened is, if first code checks all if blocks, and it might have executed one of the code, but this bottom code, what it does is it executes for all the cases, right? In such scenarios, once you do res.end, you cannot again res.write because the response has been already reached to the client, right? Now, when you restart it, your server is automatically restarted, and when you click on it, now you got 404 because you pass the authorization key, but when I send it with without authorization key, I got 401 invalid code. And if I try to use a new route like this, then again, what's the error? Stream write error. Else if, what's happening? I can return from here. Return, 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 and return, and return. So now when I'm sending the request, it's working fine. Again, I'm sending, it's working fine. I'm sending without authorization code, it's working fine. Invalid authorization code, and I'm sending it with authorization code. Again, there is a problem. Stream read write error, right? So here I have to return from this as well. So after completing, you have to return from this callback. That is what I wanted to show. So whenever you are ending the request, you have to close or you have to remove this function from the stack, right? So for that purpose, see, now everything is going to work fine. 200, and now you can send post request as well, and you can see the body put request URL not found, that is perfectly fine, and patch request, patch, and if I don't send authorization, then I get this error, and again I am sending the patch request, then it's working fine. So this is all about setting the headers, reading the headers. So here I have readed the headers. So whatever header value you are trying to send, you can do that, and you can set the headers also like this. I am setting the headers, and this is how you build a complete full-fledged Node.js application using the request or create server method, right? But this becomes very complicated. You might be already thinking, hey, our application might have hundreds of URLs, and how are we going to tackle them? Are we going to write all the cases with if else like this? No. So for that purpose, we use framework, or otherwise you have to implement your own server in the entire Node.js, and it's going to be very difficult. That's the reason we rely on frameworks like Express.js, Cavo.js, Loopback.js, which are very fast and also help us develop a very fast way, right? So that's all about HTTP, creating HTTP server in Node.js, and how we have attached the callbacks and how we have to return. So the one important understandings from this here is that once res.end is called, you cannot write again, right? Return from the callback once res.end is reached. That's it, right? Okay.